Yeah.
Rosie Riddick warms up for her favourite day of the year, a school sports day. But today marks a more exciting prospect for the family. A glimmer of hope that the cannabis oil they've been desperate to have access to may finally be available for the 15-year-old. Rosie has severe epilepsy caused by the meningitis that almost killed her as a toddler.
She's never had a day seizure free. She varies from having 5 seizures to 100 seizures a day. We've had some drugs that have reduced seizure intensity. We've had some drugs that have reduced seizure frequency, but all the drugs that she's tried have also had side effects which have affected her vision, balance, speech. She was on a medication, she couldn't walk. She's become incontinent.
What's your fear for Rosie?
I don't know, I think probably that she'll die soon, or she'll always live her life like this.
Victoria says the only thing that seems to have controlled Rosie's condition is cannabis oil that they tried for 8 weeks in California 4 years ago.
She just had this kind of calmness around her, and then by the 3rd day, because we keep a seizure diary every day of her seizures, we noticed quite a dramatic fall in her seizure count. All the seizures that she was having were so brief that actually if we weren't looking at her at that point, we wouldn't have known that she'd had a seizure. She went in the sea, which is something, again, you know, the risk of her going in the sea and having a seizure, we would never sort of feel comfortable doing that. We went to a football match. She just very much became alive, because with the anti-epileptic drugs, they often dull her down so much.
Today, a move towards change from the Home Secretary.
It has become clear to me since becoming Home Secretary that the position that we find ourselves in currently is not satisfactory. It's not satisfactory for the parents, it's not satisfactory for the doctors, and it's not satisfactory for me. I've now come to the conclusion that it is time to review the scheduling of cannabis.
Some forms of cannabis extract oils are legally available in the UK, though they typically contain just CBD, a non-psychoactive cannabis compound that doesn't get you high. Some users find them effective for treating seizures or pain relief. But other patients say only cannabis oil works for them, which contains a different extract, THC or THCA. This is the psychoactive element, and in larger quantities, these compounds create the highs that recreational users seek, and this is where the political tension lies. Critics worry that allowing cannabis in medicine will slip into liberalising the use of it recreationally, not helped today by the former Conservative leader William Hague, who called for full legalisation of cannabis, something the Home Secretary said he wasn't considering. The changes he has promised to review, compelled in part by the case of Billy Caldwell, a 12-year-old with epilepsy who had his permission to use cannabis oil revoked. This weekend, he was allowed it again after he was rushed into hospital in a critical state. Another boy with epilepsy, Alfie Dingley, was also given access today after a long fight with the government.
And here we have her daily drug load.
And while Victoria Riddick welcomes the review, she's frustrated they are even debating it.
I can't think why the motive would be not to legalise this as soon as possible and start saving lives.
And so for now, the Riddick family and others like them wait and hope that the review comes quickly and in their favour.
Well, earlier I spoke to the Labour MP Andy MacDonald, whose teenage son Rory died after an epileptic seizure. I asked him if he approved of today's announcement.
I do have mixed feelings, because I think this is it's a welcome step, it's a good step. I've just got some anxieties that, you know, we're going to be dependent upon an expert panel, whereas you've got thousands of children across the UK and their families who are waiting for this decision and waiting for this movement, and I'm just wondering whether they're going to get the assistance that they urgently need. Is it going to be timely enough? So, but we'll wait and see. But I must admit, I'm pretty sanguine about promises being made from the dispatch box about urgent action. But at least it's been recognised, and the response is, as I say, in the right direction.
Could you tell us about your own family's experience?
Yeah, we've had 2 boys with severe epilepsy, and tragically we lost Rory when he was 16 years old. He had a series of seizures, and one evening he went into status from which he never recovered. And Freddie survives him. He's 23 with epilepsy and severe developmental delay. But we've got some degree of control because he has a vagal nerve stimulator in his chest that wires up to his brain and sends pulses that brings about some amelioration of the seizure activity, but it's not perfect. But we do wonder whether cannabis oil may have been relevant for Rory all those years ago, but of course we'll never know. But I do want families who are in the same position where clinicians are saying that this is efficacious in this particular instance. I don't want them and the parents to have any barrier to actually implementing that regime. Our legal system shouldn't stand in their way. It should facilitate and enable them to do it. At the moment, it's just so painfully difficult and tortuous for the families to go through this licensing system.
Why do you think we have this cultural problem, it seems, getting our heads around cannabis? I mean, you know, we give children Ritalin, you know, and amphetamine, you know, without debating it hugely, you know, when they've got, you know, one condition, and yet when it comes to giving cannabis oil to children with epilepsy, it seems to be a huge barrier.
Yeah, well, you make a really good point. There are some really horrid side effects of a lot of drugs, but we don't stop administering them or prescribing them if we think they're going to be beneficial. So it doesn't really make any sense when there are known properties of cannabis oil that have this beneficial impact. It's cruel beyond belief to withhold that from families.
Just in terms of the pressing nature of this, you know, how quickly can you cut through a review and get CBD oil delivered to the patients who need it?
Well, Sajid Javid didn't have any difficulty about giving a licence in the Billy Caldwell case, but that was only for 20 days' supply. And we just saw Billy coming out of hospital. He was well. It had worked for him. The evidence is in front of our eyes. So I would ask him to take that attitude to every case where that is happening. Rely upon the parents, rely upon the clinicians. Let them make the decision. Don't be waiting for further reviews and panels and all the rest of it, because we've been there before with other things. We remember promises made about Grenfell. 3 weeks, everybody would be rehoused. That hasn't happened. I don't want another kicking into the long grass over this. This has to happen now. Those families are dependent upon action, not promises of reviews and panels.
What about sort of, you know, bypassing the science, though? Does that not trouble you? I mean, do you think it needs to go through a proper peer review process first?
Well, I'm not so sure it is bypassing the science, because there is plenty of evidence to show that it is efficacious. And clinicians are not going to be looking at this as the first option. They will be trying all the usual regimes of medication, but this will be an alternative, and when other things have been tried and they have failed. So I don't think we need to worry about clinicians being quite cavalier about embracing a cannabis oil culture, as it were. They'll look at this when it's appropriate and they will make that medical decision. And let's trust the medics, let's trust the parents to get on with it and deal with it.
Andy MacDonald, thank you very much.
Thank you.